Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see such a turnout here in October. Just to add on to Catherine's speech before I start mine, is communication is all about reading your room, reading your audience. And I cannot say it as strong. You can hear from my accent, I'm not from Canada originally. I was born in South Africa and only came to Canada 10 years ago. And oftentimes when I do presentations in the office, I get this deer in the headlight look. And then I realize, okay, what did I just say? What did I just say? Now, I speak English. English is my first language. But I have expressions that I use from my home country, which is not known in Canada. And when I use them, my table over here, the guys from the office is laughing because they know some of those expressions. And so read your audience. When you get that deer in the headlight look, stop, look around, and find out what did you just say that people are not getting. To move on. If you had a mirror in front of you right now, just hang on. That's better. If you had a mirror in front of you, I would ask you to look into that mirror. Because the person that's looking back at you is the person who is responsible for your success. Not your supervisor, not your colleague, not your partner at home, you. Whether you're a woman or a man, that is true. It makes no difference. We are all responsible for our own success. When I started out in my career, I did not set out to be someone who was part of a change. In grade 12, I started talking about becoming a chemical engineer. And my guidance counselor teacher immediately swung into action to get me changed into a doctor or a teacher. At no time did she even consider that engineering was a good role for a woman, for a good career for a woman to have. To her, you needed to be a doctor, a teacher, a dentist, anything but an engineer. It was only at that time that I actually realized that maybe the decisions I was making was different to my peers in my class, and different to what people would expect out there of me. But why was it so different? Honestly, at the time, only because young women did not choose to be engineers. That's really the only reason. As a woman and a young girl, I was not encouraged to do maths and science. The person who encouraged me was my mother. She was, you are going to go to university and you are going to do something. My mother did not have the opportunity to go to university, and she was making sure that I did go. When I got to university, I was definitely the minority. I was trying to think last night of how many young women were in my class, and I seem to recall about 5 of us with about 200 men in the lecture room. Of those 5, if I remember correctly, 3 fell out in first year, so there was 2 of us left. A lot of the men also did fall out, but they weren't as noticeable, of course. I could not find statistics for when I graduated in the 1980s. But the PEG has printed statistics that has been mentioned before earlier on today, that in 2001, the number of young women enrolled in engineering throughout Canada was at 20%, just over 20%. And that was a peak. Now in 2010, when the same percentages was run, the percentage was just over 17%. So we peaked, can you believe it, in 2001. And now we are not back there yet. What happened? Why are women not choosing to go into engineering? What's even more alarming to me is that since the 1990s, on average, the number of women enrolled in engineering was around, in 1991, was around about 14.5% were women in engineering. So that the figures have remained the same, above 14%. The enrollment has remained the same, above 14% for the past 20 years. And yet, in 2011, only just over 10% of the professional engineers registered in Alberta are women. So what happened? Did those women fall out of engineering? Did they never register as engineers? Now, I know from my own office that when the young women are able to register professional engineers, they're in my office. So I know they are getting themselves registered. Does that mean that we are losing every year as women are graduating, they do not step back into engineering. They go and do something else. A profession that does not utilize the full diversity of all its people is missing out on complementary skill sets, innovation, and engagement. What makes someone a change leader? Is it that you start a civil rights movement like Nellie McClung and petition for women to get the same equal voting rights as men, which she actually achieved in Canada in 1918? Or is it the young girl who in grade 12 decides to become an engineer? Or is it the young mother who goes back to university and gets her degree? It's all of them. Change leaders do not have to carry banners, protest, or march for what they believe in. They are here in this room. Change leaders are in engineering or women who are able to contribute to engineering and at the same time are able to work this magical work-life balance. There's just been a run of articles in the newspapers and magazines about the young people starting their careers today. And they don't isolate out engineering, they just mention careers. And they say that the young people are choosing happiness and then salary and then the pension fund. But why can one not be happy? Have a partner, a family, and take up a management position within your company? Of course you can. There are challenges. Every career choice comes with challenges. It doesn't matter what you do in life. All career choices have their challenges. So just to get back to a little bit about myself, I got my chemical engineering degree from the University of the Witwatersrand in South Africa. What many people do not know about me, even within my own company, is that I failed my first year. Wasn't that I'm not capable, I am capable. But I didn't know how to manage my time. And so at the end of this experience, having come from school where you've done extremely well and you fail, I mean, you look at yourself and you think you're a failure? No. What I decided is at that stage, I stepped out, I'd failed, I decided I wasn't going back to engineering. So Winston Churchill said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." I've always liked this quote. I really enjoy some Winston Churchill's quotes, but this quote in particular I enjoy because he mentions success and failure all in one sentence, implying that true success comes with the ability to continue no matter what comes before. Well, I did go back to university, a lot more humble, and redid my first year, and today here I stand, a chemical engineer. So even though things might go wrong in your life and not as you expect them, it doesn't mean you have to throw up your arms and give up. It means you have to pick yourself up and get going all over again. My first job was working in a factory that converted corn into starches and glucose. My first year, I operated. That is what we did in those days. We did not go into engineering companies. They didn't even want to look at us if we didn't at least have some operating experience. So I operated, and I did small operation and maintenance type projects. I learned a lot about operators. I learned a lot about who they are, what they expect, and more importantly, what they expected from the engineering designs that we as engineers were doing. And sometimes it wasn't always what we thought. I mean, we thought we were quite smart sometimes, and sometimes they're telling us, you're not that smart. when this DCS lights up like a Christmas tree and I have no idea which alarm set it up, I don't think you're that smart. And I think that is important for all of us as well as engineers, as an aside, is we need to go out to the people who we are delivering these designs for. We need to go and speak to them and find out, what do they expect from us? What do they see? What is the end result that they actually see? Because they're the guys who have to operate it. I did small operation and maintenance type projects, as I mentioned, and after 3 years, I joined a licensor engineering procurement and construction company, and I mainly did lump sum turnkey projects. At this time, both my husband and I were trying to develop our careers. It meant that we had to travel a lot for business. We took assignments, but the good side about all that is I often had to go to Germany on assignment, and he joined me out there, and we got to see Europe. He often had to go to the UK on assignments, so we got to see the UK too. So even though we were working very hard and building our careers, and both of us were building our careers, which meant we spent a lot of time apart as we were both doing separate assignments. But it did mean that the time we did have, we spent it traveling and enjoying the areas we were actually working in. I spent many a month operating on construction sites, commissioning, and getting the plant to do what we expected it to do. I often get asked by young ladies who I'm asking to go to a site, and they say, well, how did it go? How was the construction site? In all honesty, in all the time that I worked on construction sites, I never had issues. And if I did, to be honest, I would have just gone, never mind, tough, and move on. I've never had issues with people not wanting me on this site. I treat people with respect, and I think in turn I got their respect back. So for many of the young ladies who are sitting perhaps in this room wondering about that assignment on site, honestly, I have never had issues personally. And I come from a time where there was like one woman on the whole construction site as an engineer. And we didn't really have issues. If you are going to take to heart everything everybody says to you, you are going to be miserable. So I think that's a lesson no matter whether you're an engineer, a lawyer, or what you do. You do need to just move on. So I did this for about 7 years, and then my husband and I decided, I was now in my starting to become middle 30s, and we decided we wanted to start a family. And we did start a family. In South Africa at that time, there was no such thing as maternity leave. You resigned. I mean, that was that. Your company would keep your job for you, but you resigned. And I chose to stay home for 3 years with my children, just over 3 years with my children. And I have 2 beautiful boys who are now 17 and 14 years of age. I knew when I left for the maternity, when my first son was born, I really did not worry about getting back into the workforce. I felt I had a strong enough resume that I could rest on for the time being while I was on maternity leave, and that I could use when I came back into the marketplace. So that really was not a concern for me. I enjoyed my time at home. I enjoyed the time with my children. Is it a choice that everybody else has to make? Of course not. You have to make that decision for yourself and decide for yourself how long you want to make that maternity leave. I then decided to go back to work, but I wanted to work part-time. At that time, part-time was not something many companies were entertaining. And I did go back to work at Fluor in South Africa, and I actually worked part-time for them. And they then asked me, at the time, when you go back part-time, there's always this concern, will people consider me not focused on my career because I am part-time? Well, the only way to show people that that's not the case is just to work, just to get your job done. Make sure that what you've committed to do, you get done. And if you are working part-time, make sure the work that you are doing is fitting with that part-time commitment that you have made. I also ensured that I engaged within not only work, but part of the community association and part of the community work that our company does. So when we had events with the company, I was there. Because you do have to maintain that networking capability. You do have to network. You can't just work, go home. You do need to maintain that. Plus, it was fun. I enjoyed those networking times that we had. That include volunteering. We used to have runs in South Africa. A lot of volunteering is done by running, like you have a 5-kilometer run, and then companies would all, like the corporate challenge, all get involved and all go run 5 kilometers, and I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed it, and at the same time I was networking. So networking is not only business-wise, networking and talking technical stuff. Networking is also doing these volunteering events, being part of the community. I met so many engineers being the silent auction chairman for my son's school, more so than I have met sometimes at other engineering events. So networking is not only within your company, it is outside your company too, within your community. At that time, Fluor offered me the position of Deputy Process Department Manager. Fluor understood at the time that I wanted to work part-time. And so we split the job. We had a department manager who did all the technical part of the job, did all the audits. I was glad I missed that one. And he also did all of the technical side, the interventions into projects. And he asked me to do this people side of the job, the soft skills side of the job, which I enjoy anyway. So that was an easy yes. And I continued to work part-time. I will lie if I say that I didn't go in outside of my part-time hours. I did. If I had a deadline to meet, if I had people issues at work that I felt I had to be there for, I would make sure I was there. That was the time when my husband and I managed it such that he could take care of our 2 boys. Or I got someone to babysit them. It was not a big deal. But the important thing is I managed the time. So I was able to do it. Working part-time is not for your company to walk in and say, okay, your part-time hours are over, time to go home. It's up to you to manage that time. We all experience changes in our lives. Excuse me. I'm still getting over a bad cold. We all experience changes in our life which allows the work-life balance pendulum to swing either way, either to work or, if you want to call it, the life side. Although work is life too, but anyway. When we are new grads, our careers is all about work. We are building that career. When you start a family, whether you're a man or a woman, your career does take a little bit of a notch down, just because you are putting your priorities elsewhere. But then again, the pendulum starts to swing back towards the career side as you become more comfortable with your family and you become more comfortable with the routine. I guess what I'm really trying to say is that your career progresses, you have options that you can make. You can decide that you cannot take an assignment right now because of personal decisions. However, never close that door. It doesn't mean that just because today you cannot take the assignment, it doesn't mean that in a year's time you can't. So you never must close that door. Always make sure you keep that door open, even though for that time you cannot make that decision and you cannot make that commitment. The important thing about all of this work-life balance is that it should not be about women feeling that they need to give up their career desires and put their partner and their children first. It's about partners deciding what constitutes work-life balance for their particular family. So the decisions my husband and I have made might not be the decisions you want to make, but you need to make those decisions for your particular family. We had a lot of help from caregivers, wonderful ladies who helped us out in our home. And that was okay for our family. That was good for us. Now, some people don't want to do it that way, and that is okay. You just need to make that decision for your family and make it work for your family. My husband and I always make sure that one of us attends important stuff for our kids. By important stuff, I mean award ceremonies, hockey games, musicals. We can't always both of us be there, but at least one of us will be there. And if it's an event where if we were to miss it, our children would remember, then we make sure we're there. And that's sort of how we try and balance it. I could never go on school trips. Sometimes I'm very glad I couldn't. But that is now one thing I could never manage, because it would be a whole day away from work and I just couldn't manage it. My kids are okay with that. I explain to them where I am and what I'm doing, and they're okay with it. They don't feel they've had absent parents. In fact, when we first came to Canada, we lived in a northern British Columbia town called Kitimat. How many of you know where Kitimat is? Oh, I'm shocked. There's a lot more than I thought would know. Anyway, we lived in Kitimat for 8 months of that year. And we had just emigrated, and I decided I was not going to work. I wanted to settle the family down. Immigration is a huge step, and I decided, you know what, I'm not going to work for the year. So I had the opportunity of being able, in the small town, the children come home for lunch. So I was able to walk to the school, pick up my kids, walk home with them. Wonderful. Well, after Kitimat, we moved to Calgary, and I went back to work full time. And honestly, it only hit me the other day. I said to the kids, you know, you never complained that I went back to work. And they said, Mom, we were so glad you're going back to work, because you were like a helicopter parent. So, I mean, the point being, my kids are okay with it, because we have got a routine that works for our family. They don't feel like my husband and I are absent. They are more than happy. They tell us when they want us to be specifically at something, and then we will make sure we are there, that one of us is there. And that's what you need to do within your family. You need to decide what is important for your particular family and circumstance and work towards it. I've never had a fear about accepting a position, although at the time I was not sure how I was going to fit everything in. To be honest, when we emigrated, my husband and I, we had no idea what jobs we were going to have in Canada. I mean, we knew we had strong engineering resumes from South Africa, but we had no idea what kind of jobs we would get here. We knew that we would not have the same level of responsibility that we had in our companies in South Africa. But if we'd allowed our fear to overpower us, we would not have gone through with the immigration. And here we are today, very happy as Canadian citizens and with re-established careers. We have now been here for 10 years. Now, as companies, we need to accommodate the work-life balances of both women and men. As more women move into the workplace, we need to accommodate the two career families. Fluor established GROW, which is Growing Representation and Opportunity for Women. When I first joined the engineering world in 1986, I was very used to being the only woman engineer wherever I went. I should add, at most conferences, I was more than happy I was the only woman, because there was no lineup at the washroom. So I was just explaining to the few men that were here today that they now know what we feel like when we go to the conferences, including the washroom. Very empty for them. However, the status quo should not continue. And Fluor has recognized to ensure Fluor's long-term business success, we need to have women and men working together to cultivate opportunities to attract, retain, and develop women, ensuring inclusion and promoting diversity, which will in turn promote innovation and engagement. So what does this mean for our company? It means simple things like flex time, alternate work schedules, which have been mentioned before. These programs are open to both women and men. The alternate work schedules was something we had to get a project manager's head around. Most projects expect engineers to be around from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. But they soon realized that engineers did what they had to do to complete their milestones, to get the work done. And does it really matter if it's done outside of 8 to 5? Of course not. At the end of the day, we just want the project to run and the project to run smoothly. I mean, of course, it's recognized that not all functions can work on these kind of alternate schedules, but where they can, they are working well. We have also started a mentoring circle for women engineers and professionals that are on our sites. I think one of the biggest complaints that we had from women on our construction sites is that they felt very isolated because there weren't many of them to start off with. They perhaps didn't know someone on the next construction site. So we actually started a mentoring circle. They call in every month. They talk to the executives in the home office, but they also talk to each other and have built their own network. Nancy Foster mentioned sponsors. And yes, as women in management positions, we do need to sponsor. The other thing we do need to do is to talk about how we got here. You know, I was mentioning to some people, I'm very uncomfortable about talking about my personal life and how I got here. And I have realized of late that I do need to do that. Because I do need to let young people know that you can get here. You can have a partner. You can have a family. I've been married for 29, going on to 29 years. So it is possible to do it and still have a career. I was told about a year ago by somebody in my office that she came to me and she said, "You are the reason some of us don't know how to work a schedule." I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Well, you don't tell us how you do it. You don't tell us that you've got a caregiver at home, or do you buy your meals at Sobeys, or what do you do, you know, just what do you do to make it all work?" So I have now started talking more about it and have encouraged other women in my office to also talk more about it. Grow has been the focus of our senior leadership and has been established throughout Fluor. Each office is allowed to set their own key result areas that Grow should focus on in that particular office. The reason being that every office is in a different culture. So we have offices in India, we have offices in the UK, we have offices worldwide. And every culture is different. And what women would require from that office is going to be different. For example, in Canada, we have a pretty generous maternity leave. We have a year's maternity leave. Other countries, in some countries, there's no maternity leave. In some countries, it is a few weeks maybe. So every office is allowed to focus on what's important for that particular office. Here in Canada, we have established a keep in touch agreement that assists women while they're on maternity leave. This agreement is done between the department manager and the employee before they leave. And the employee decides how much contact they want. So they decide if they want their department managers to call them once a month. They decide if they want emails. They decide which email address we must use to send them these emails. And they will let us know if they want to be invited to functions, if they wanted to be invited to training. And so in this agreement, it then tells us, myself as a department manager, how this person wants to be engaged while they are on maternity leave. In this way, they do not feel as isolated as they would otherwise feel. I think when you first have a baby for the first few months is like a whirl. I mean, you don't actually want to know anyone, you don't want to talk to anyone, you're just surviving. But then finally, when your routine sets in, the boredom sets in. I mean, there's only so much CSI you can watch in one day. So I think, you know, this keep in touch agreement is specifically for that. So I have some ladies who've told me, look, don't contact me until 6 months down the road, or yes, I want to be involved, or no, I don't want to be, call me at about 9 months. And it is entirely left up to the employee how much engagement they want from us. The important thing is, no matter what career you have in life, it takes work to get there. Don't kid yourself. Just because we're engineers doesn't mean we work any harder than a lawyer or a doctor or whatever to get to where we get. We all have to work hard to get there. It takes sacrifice of personal time to get there, and just how high up in the corporate ladder you want to go will help you to evaluate how to balance this work-life balance. Remember, as you move through your life, you will reevaluate the decisions you made. I mean, what the decisions you might have made just after coming out of school are definitely different decisions you will make when you're getting to my age. When I left school, after university, I was going to be a technical chemical engineer. That was it. And today, I do very little technical chemical engineering, and I love my job. So you can't always set out exactly the way it's going to be, because life offers you challenges, and you need to take those. It takes organization, both at home and at work, to achieve the balance, but it is achievable. In closing, I'd like, if speaking out on the fact that we need more women in engineering, and specifically in leadership positions, is the sign of a change leader, then yes, I am a change leader. If encouraging young girls in grade 12 to consider engineering as a career is a sign of a change leader, then yes, I am a change leader. I encourage all of you who are engineers to become change leaders, to promote engineering as a career for young women, to help them understand what engineers do have, that engineers do have a work-life balance. It's a myth that we don't. We do have a work-life balance, and that they can be a success. I enjoy the career I chose as a young girl at 17. At the time, I had no idea that one day I'd have my career, get married, start a family, leave South Africa, immigrate to Canada, and address you, delegates at the Women in Engineering Expo. I took every day as it came, met the challenges that it threw at me, both good and at 2 a.m. in the morning with very sick children, and I've successfully built a career. Thank you.